In the darkest nights, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone.
We hear you, and we believe you. Hey everyone, how you doing? You've landed at Surviving Together. If you didn't know, Shannon, Crystal, so glad both of you are here today. Why don't we chat a bit and wait for a few others? I know that some people wait until they get the go live notification, and that doesn't happen until that intro plays. So let's just chat a little bit. I was going to be on a panel with Crystal Phoenix earlier today, but guys, I got going with doing research, and sometimes I just can't let go, and I'm really sorry about that. So unfortunately, I didn't get to join over there, but I'm hoping to. Crystal and I really want to collab again soon on her channel, because she's collabed over here before. So let's see how everything is going with everybody. Shannon, how you feeling? You say I'm good, but how are you feeling? Like, is your cold getting better? Do you feel like you're turning a corner? I know that Janet might be here. She feels like she's just got a really bad cold, but no longer death, which is good. We like taking things out of that realm. You're over the cold and feel much better. Oh, that is absolutely awesome. My hair is probably going to be up and down today, guys, because it is my fiddle thing. I can't fiddle really while I'm with you guys, so I probably use it to start fiddling, mainly because I'm still, as you can tell, going ballistic. I should say, getting very irritated on not being able to get my hair up to where it's comfortable and it stays up and it's not flopping all over the place and without extra pins. And as you see, I just didn't do it. I'm talking to you and I can't tie my hair and talk to you at the same time. Is that not incredibly interesting? Who else with nails finds every small crack in it as soon as they're running them through their hair? Like every little crack in my nails, I'll get a hair stuck. I'm like, oh, got a file over there. Okay, well, you know where that got. It's like, geez, oh, Pete's. So excuse me one moment while I, here we go, guys. Get that little nub, the hair and the nails. I know, always, right? What us women do. All right. Well, I've spoken with a lot of people today, so I do know, or yesterday and today, so I do know that there were a bunch of people who wanted to join, or at least were thinking about it. So I don't know if they will or if they won't today. So you know what? We'll just get started. Oh, Crystal, how are you doing? Everything all right with you? I've got my mouse plugged in, so hopefully it won't die. And this is actual mouse. I adjusted some of the lighting and the settings a little bit. I don't know. It's looking a little white for my taste, but we'll work with it. we are going to be talking about public service announcements. That was the goal anyway. Kind of the history of sexual assault and public service announcements and dealing with them through the years. I always pick one of these subjects and think, I'll just give you a nice little overview. And then I get going into the little nooks and crannies, and I end up not being able to put as nice of an overview as I would like. Mainly the reason is because from 2000 to present, explosion. I mean, literal explosion of public service announcements. And they're everywhere. The colleges, any nonprofit, any for-profit company, you name it, probably put something out there. And I really wanted to get a good representative sample of a lot of them, because there's some of them that, they try, but they're just not that great. They're not getting the message across in the right way. And I want to bring a few more of those to the fold. Oh my goodness, it was minus 27 Celsius there yesterday, plus the windshield. Geez, oh Pete. I do not know what the temperature is, to be honest with you guys. I know it's cold. I know it's below 0 Celsius because it's snowing and has been snowing. Minus 27. Is that going to be like 0 Fahrenheit, which is damn cold? Thankfully, we haven't gotten that. And Shannon and I still have not decided on my dates. I'm going to have to do that. Like, as soon as I get off this live, I have to decide on those travel dates so that I can get things locked in. Because I don't want to end up out any of the, good deals with waiting, which is always me. I was going to do this yesterday. Screw you. It's 72 and beautiful. Yeah. I heard. Shannon, quick question. How far are you from that St. Pete airport? So I'm considering flying down to Florida either this month or at the new year. And you can fly into Tampa or fly into St. Petersburg, Florida, which has a direct flight from where I am in Michigan, which is nice. But it's a little farther for me. Yeah. Oh, it's 2.5 hours south. Wow. I didn't realize it was quite that far from you. I thought you could pick me up and then we could just spend a day. Like I could get an early flight and then we'll just spend the day together. And then you could take me to Zephyr Hills, which I think is probably a couple hours. I think north of you. I'd have you driving all over the place. We can't do that. Maybe I could have David come into Tampa from there. And that would still give us time to spend together. Like, am I coming? Am I going? Spend a day or two on one of the ends or something like that. That's my thought right now anyway. Okay. I'm moving my camera down a little bit, guys, because as you know, I tend to sync during the 2 hours or hour or so that we're on here. So yeah, that would be better. Well, guys, it might just be the three of us today. So that's all right. We will, I think Crystal is probably still going on her live. I'm going to let her know right now. One second, guys. Chat seats amongst yourselves for a second. There we go. Oh, that's right. I'll text with you. Text me. Let me know when he is. I don't, do you know like how late you'll be? Like how late in the month you'll be there? Taking care of him doing that. I'm sorry. I have to tell. Janet was asking what the subject matter was today. And I can't type. Morning, Ben. It's technically 3:15 here, so is it afternoon for you too? How you doing? What's going on? Hey, Tommy, how you doing? How's your Saturday? I know I have several subs who are watching the football game. Don't ask me which one. Haven't a clue. Just watching a football game. You going on the 11th, which I know I have to be here on the 11th because I have a friend here and staying for a few days. Oh, okay. Yeah, you'd be back before I would be done. I'm not coming down until at least after Thanksgiving, which we just had. Christmas, not coming in until after Christmas, which then I looked up and realized, oh my God. Did anybody realize how late Hanukkah was this year? I looked it up because I'm like, do I need to get my gifts like now today, or can I wait, a little bit, because I'm just not on it as I have been these past couple of years. I just haven't been quite as much. I think it's, I'm just a little more unstable financially. And so you tend to try and like figuring out who really needs what and who's getting who what, so that I don't, then I'll find my niche and get the, one or two gifts. Oh, when it's the 23rd. Hanukkah starts the evening of the 23rd of December. So it'll be going the 23rd through the 30th. So it's quite late this year. So it overlaps with Christmas, which is kind of always nice when that happens. Go to my parents, light candles here. Or go to my parents and open gifts and come home and light candles. Oh my gosh, it's goofy, but it's good. So what were we going to talk about today? I think what did I have? PSAs through the years. So yeah, as things usually go, we're only going to go up to about 2000, and then the rest of them are going to kind of get done in another. Shannon, that is my biggest question right now, is whether or not I'm going to spend New Year's down there, because the flights are like $350 if I go between Christmas and New Year's. But if I wait until after the New Year, like we were talking, it's like $125. And again, that's on Allegiant. That's that, airline that goes into St. Pete, which does not seem to be convenient for anybody getting me from there. I didn't realize it was quite so far from where you guys are. So I'm going to have to look at flights into Atlanta, and I think they were like $650 not Atlanta. I think the flights were like $650 if I went into Tampa. I think pretty similar to Orlando. So versus $350 if I went to Allegiant, St. Pete. And that seems to be the only one that is really flying direct for me too. Otherwise, almost everything's going through Detroit. So I'll figure it out. Does anybody else have holiday plans already? Are you guys going to be having Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa or whatever you celebrate? If you celebrate anything, are you doing it at home? Are you traveling to family? Do you have New Year's Eve celebrations already? I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. Leave me a comment now or after the show. And while I'm thinking on it, guys, please hit that like button if you think about it right now, which means you are thinking about it because I'm telling you about it. subscribe, check your bell. If you don't get notifications, make sure your bell is selected all on the bell, because if you just hit subscribe and you never went into the bell to click all for notifications, you're not going to get them. So FYI. Oh, you're going to spend a few days with Kim. That's awesome. Crystal Phoenix, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop by. I was trying, and I was looking at the, I kept looking at the clock, and my son lost his car keys again. So yeah, and then my mouse died, and I was trying to cut and paste just using the laptop, and ALV, so glad you're here. I listened to some of your Michigan horror stories. ALV has a channel, and feel free, anybody, drop your link. Well, you'll have to type your link. I'll have to drop a link until I get a wrench in here. I've got to make a few more wrenches, guys. But I'll definitely get all your links in here. But he was doing Michigan, which is where I am, Michigan ghost stories. So he tells ghost stories. So they're kind of fun. So if you like listening to ghost stories, definitely check out ALV's channel. And I'll put that up here as soon as I can. Oh, he did? Perfect. All right. Sorry, I'm going to be checking my phone occasionally because I am waiting for some information, health information. I can't do it while I'm currently online. Otherwise, I definitely will. He did England last night. Ooh, cool. I just, okay, Crystal, good. Yeah, next time, please definitely let me know. And I'll be, I'll promote it here so that everybody here knows that I'll be going on your channel. And let's just set that up ahead of time. Okay, a little bit earlier. And I think that will, I'll definitely get my timing right, get all my stuff done ahead of time. You were able to do it from your phone? Doesn't even make any sense. But hey, congrats. Strange. Oh, you're not late. I haven't even gotten started into what we're going to. I was just kind of chit-chatting around, just, giving people a few more minutes to. You added a mod from your phone. So you think maybe I can use my phone and go into my channel and make you a mod? Because that would be nice. Let's see. Nope, that's analytics. Name, handle, pronouns, descriptions, settings. Is it in general? Oh, you mean going into my actual live on here? It's not letting me. All right, there. Ah, looky there. I just added you, Crystal. You should. You should be a mod now. That's sweet. Okay, so you should be a mod now. You may have to refresh. But cool. All right, let me know if you don't, I'm not seeing you with a wrench here, and I'm afraid to refresh. Ah, there you go. Yeah! Woohoo! James Simpson, how you doing? What's going on? I just made Crystal a wrench. I need another wrench. Misha's one of my wrenches, but she should be resting because she did such a phenomenal job on trying to, on organizing and getting us all up and running with the village and having 24-hour support here for people on Thanksgiving if they didn't have anybody to be with or, just got lonesome at a particular time. So she was definitely sorry, I was just checking out the thing here. Okay, cool. Yay, we have another. So guys, if you need your links thrown up, please just let Crystal Phoenix know. We've got two crystals, one with a K, one with a C in here right now, and we'll throw them up. Crystal, if you could also throw up Tommy's, if you could put the name of the channel before you put the link to, so people don't have to find it in the actual URL. If you just put their name ahead of time, that would be great too. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Well, guys, let's start then. So I kind of renamed today's show, and we're going to be more just talking about sexual advocacy, anti-sexual violence advocacy. Let me put it that way. Anti-sexual violence advocacy in the United States. From the beginnings to around 2000. And that's where I am cutting it off for today. Now, there is so much more that I could do. This is, hey, Ned, looky there. I made Crystal a wrench. But you should be resting. Ben is right. You should be resting. Again, thank you, Ned, for being such a wonderful person. ALV, I think it's just you, but I was still for a minute. That was just me being still. She does look good in blue, huh? Let's see. And if you have ever caught my intro, the song Surviving Together there, that was put together by our very own Misha here, Awakened by the Looking Glass. She created that herself and love it. Okay, so anti-sexual violence assault, anti-sexual assault advocacy. There we go. That works out better. Where did we get our starts from? Last time we started talking about this, I was focused more on the sitcoms of the 70s and 80s because a lot of the advocacy work was being done through television, through these shows, as a way of getting at the younger generations and at picking at situations that weren't always being dealt with in the media. Because even if somebody released a campaign, it didn't mean that any of the media of the day was going to pick it up. So it was a really powerful way of getting across the message of dealing with issues that normally weren't dealt with in society, at least not within, common talk, right? So All in the Family, as we discussed huge for breaking ground in the 70s, dealing with topics of racism and sexism and sexual assault and all kinds of issues that people just didn't talk about in polite company. And yet they were dealing with it. And as the sitcoms of the 70s, the 80s, the late 70s, and the 80s, and then into the 90s really became geared at younger audiences, then that kind of shifted the types of scenes, the scenarios that they brought up. And they were focused a lot more on children, which is great because when you look at the greater advocacy, the focus was on women. And really, there was a lot, the focus wasn't on child abuse. It wasn't on incest. It wasn't on these situations of grooming. And the TV programs that came out dealing with it were really powerful for, I'll say, for those of us growing up. I know that there's several of them that I remember to this day. As we went through them, I was just like, wow, yeah, I really remember that. And I remember people talking about it. Hey, Todd, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Janet, good to see you. How are you feeling? Two people, two different health issues, but hopefully you guys are doing much better now. So where did we start with this? Addressing sexual assault in the United States? Well, it really began with people pushing women's rights forward. So the first thing that I could find was actually in 1790, and a woman named Mary Wollstonecraft wrote The Vindication of the Rights of Women. And she was arguing for women to be thought of in equal terms as men, that they weren't dim, that they weren't illogical, they weren't irrational, that a lot of times when they were looked at this way, it was because they had a lack of education. And she's like, educate us just as much as the men are educated, and there's no difference. She also was attacking the patriarchal society, just the inherent men's dominance within society. And she also advocated that marriages should be looked at as more of a partnership, that the women and men were equal within a marriage. Maybe they had different roles that were defined, but in terms of importance to the marriage, both men and women were equally important. This is 1790 or 1792 when it was published. That's amazing, guys. Was she specifically dealing with any issues with sexual assault? No, she wasn't. But she is one of the first people over here on this side of the pond to be pushing these ideas forward of women equality. The next time we really see this being brought to the forefront and sexual assaults being included actually in it is with the women of color. And these are anybody of, and I say women of color because these are just not the African Americans or who were identified as the Negroes as such. They were what they were called the mulattoes and the American Indians, the indigenous population. So it included all of those. So I'll say women of color, but primarily the African American descent. Beginning in the 1930s, there was a pair of sisters, the Grimke sisters, Angela and Sarah, and they were some of the very first female activists who were anti-slavery and actually advocating for women to have rights, and specifically women of color. So racism, sexism, and sexual violence were kind of all rolled into one conversation. Now, most of it was focused much more on the racism and sexism aspect of it, but you could not take the sexual violence piece out. Sojourner Truth in 1851 made her famous "Ain't I a Woman" speech, which again was a pretty landmark moment for women's rights. And all she's arguing is we're the same. To give you just a little bit, in case you guys have not heard her speech, it's not very long, but I'll just, maybe I'll do the whole thing. It's not very long, but it is an incredible speech, especially for somebody in 1851 in the United States. You got to think, this is pre-Civil War, guys. She said, well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women of the North, all talking about rights, the white men will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best places everywhere. Nobody helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any special place. Ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could heed me. Ain't I a woman? I work as much and eat as much as I man, when I could get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 5 children and seen most sold off into slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? That man said women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever was made strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women together ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they is asking to do it. The men better let them. Obliged to you for hearing from me, and now old Sojourner ain't got nothing more to say. I like her. She's a spunky gal. Basically, I ain't taking no shit. I do the same work as a man, pretty much. I've had 5 kids. Where are you getting off saying that I don't have as many rights as a man? And she's speaking from a Black woman's perspective. I mean, she had less rights than Black men who had less rights than white women. See how the hierarchy went back down. It was awful. And for her to stand up in 1851 and the others who were bringing the movement, the women's movement forward in this era and dealing with racism, it allowed for what they think really is the first public speaking out against rape in the United States, which would have been in 1866. There was, in May of 1866, there was a riot, and a group of African American women were gang raped by a white mob during this riot. And afterwards, they testified in front of Congress in regards to their experiences. Nothing happened, but they spoke out against something white women didn't even speak out against. They spoke out about something that wasn't even a crime. It wasn't a crime. Not yet. It's 1866. In the 1870s, there was an African-American woman by the name of Ida B. Wells, and she really took it upon herself to address this issue about sexual violence against women of color. And what she did was she brought home the point that, listen, no white man is ever going to be arrested for the rape of a Black woman. But Black men can be lynched for raping a white woman. And often, as the saying goes, as often they were used as a scapegoat where there was consensual touching, consensual sex, but you just did not do that. So she organized and led anti-lynchings. This was her way of protesting this unfairness. It would be nice, right? That they didn't have to fight so hard for colored women's rights. It couldn't just be for people's rights. But they did. And they continued to do this, and the women's movement continued to move on. We saw the suffrage movement. We saw women starting to, white women starting to get into political activism as well. And the next kind of big movement that propelled the conversation of anti-sexual assault forward started in the 1940s and 50s with the civil rights movement in the United States. And that, as it pushed forward and more people were then behind the civil rights movement, the women's liberation movement in the 50s, early 60s started. And so then you've got the combination of both of these efforts moving forward into the 70s. And this is where you start to see the huge push of a national conversation about sexual violence against women. It wasn't too much on the national stage before then. Pockets here and there. But until the 60s, and you really see these ideas moving forward and people pushing back against the notion that women's place was only in the home, that women had to accept marital rape, that women had to accept sexual violence wherever they went because it was a man's world. And you were responsible for how a man reacts. You were responsible for them because of where you were, the time at night it was, how you were dressed, what you did, all the victim blaming that went into the rape culture. And so they're finally pushing back in the 60s and 70s, and we start seeing organized protests, organized rallies for the first time, specifically for sexual violence, or against sexual violence, I guess I should say. Hey, Keela, how you doing? Love you, girl. Hope you're doing okay. Crystal M says that the guy who essayed Maya Angelou went to jail but was let out right away, and then others unalived him. This caused her to go mute for years until she found her voice. Wow. Yeah, it's, one thing I haven't gotten involved too much involved in is the essay stories of people who are famous, became famous through this, that, or the other thing, whether it's through entertainment or through politics or on any other particular avenue. There's some really powerful stories out there, and that, there you go. Mark that one down. There's another idea for celebrities who have been essayed, who have spoken out about this in the past. How did we get to where we've gotten with the reporting with everything with Diddy and with Epstein and, prior to then. That would be an interesting one. Okay, note to self. We'll continue on with a different conversation with that. So in the 1970s, say right around 1970, the first Take Back the Night marches and rallies were being organized, and it actually started in the United Kingdom and in England with an organization. Oh wait, hang on a second. I do not want to get this wrong. So it looks like in the early 1970s, Take Back the Night rally was attended. The first one that they attribute it to was the tribunal council meeting in Belgium, attended by 2,000 plus women representing 40 plus countries. Wow. That is huge. And that was one of the earliest activist protests for the lack of safety for women. Take Back the Night is all about women being able to walk where they want, when they want, meaning any time at night, alone, and be safe. They should. It's still not the reality that we live in. But to Take Back the Night marches, this concept spread. They are doing them still to this day. If you never have been involved in one, they're pretty powerful. You don't have to be a woman to march in support. But when you go to these rallies and you speak to these women about their experiences walking at night in a city, there's no more powerful testimony. And I think especially as a man, and we are going to speak in mainly women, men in that dichotomy. However, I am recognizing, and I will also be speaking about men as well being victims, because they can be a victim of sexual violence. It's just that the vast, vast majority are men. And so when I speak in these terms, please, please, please understand that I do mean men and women. Figure out a way to adjust my language a little bit, because I don't want to say just people, though, because that's not quite right in terms of where the history of things has been. Cece, thank you for stopping in. Aw, that is so nice. We were happy to keep you company on Thanksgiving. It was great for us. That's all right. You can catch us on replay if you want, but thanks for stopping in today. As you can see, guys, I've already made it down below my thing. And it is because, my butt pillow, I need a new one. I am getting a standing desk for Christmas. That's the only thing that I've asked for from my parents for Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, my next 50 birthdays, whatever, so I can save my tailbone. Sorry, you guys can see my hair's getting in my way here. So, yes, they're right. You're right. They do. Most college campuses have them every year. It's something that most cities have them as well. And they took off, and it was a great concept. Reclaim the Night is another. Some people have termed that as well, because in 2001, the Take Back the Night Foundation was officially started. So they have the name Take Back the Night. So anybody who goes over there. So other people who do similar type things, they use Reclaim the Night. So you might see both names. The show Veronica Mars actually had a couple of episodes about Take Back the Night. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the first time I'd ever heard it, I was on a college campus, and that's how I found out about it. I graduated high school in 1990, so talking about sexual violence was not an everyday thing yet. It wasn't anything we heard about in school. We had these sitcoms that we were watching, and we started hearing Stranger Danger, right? All through the 70s, the Stranger Danger. And then we started hearing about date rape. That came along in the 80s a little bit more. But so by the time I graduated, not a whole lot. And that's when I had found out about it. I want to show you, though. I have to get to it. Let me get to it. So one of the organizations in the United States now, the National Organization of Women, was started in 1966. And they were definitely started as a women's lib movement. They were focused on gender equality. They were focused on pay. They were focused on, more your financial things. But as their membership grew in the 70s and then definitely into the 80s, they took on these concepts of sexual violence. The focus in the 70s was really about trying to bring home the notion that, I'll say, men are potential rapists. All men are potential rapists. And at this time, there was no focus on women being rapists. Okay, so currently, until I get into the 2000s, I'm really going to be focusing with the men being the perpetrators. They wanted to tell everybody that these were your neighbors, they were your parents, they were your, any male member of your community can be a rapist. And if you were to look at everybody around you, you probably were seeing several. You just didn't know it. So they wanted to get this concept that rape is not just a sexual act, but it's sexual violence. It is about power and control. Yes, it's a sexual act, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is not sexual gratification. It's the power and the control that it offers that is the more satisfying aspect of doing that act. This did lead in the 1970s to the creation of rape crisis centers. And actually, the very first one was in 1971 in San Francisco. And very quick, the 1970s, 1972, there was an explosion of rape crisis centers. You could find them in most major cities. To begin with, DC, New York, Philadelphia, Boston, LA, they all opened centers. Seattle opened one even in 1972. So from after the first one was opened, it was like a cascade. And you just saw a proliferation of them throughout the country, which was absolutely phenomenal. $100%, Keela. She says she tells her sex trafficked victims rape is about control. It is. It is not about sex. Literally, it was earlier this year, I was speaking to a gentleman from Australia and told him about my channel, and he was shocked when we started getting into a conversation about why I had the channel, what I was focused on, because he legitimately, and he's somebody probably 6 years older than I was, I'd say, mid 50s, maybe late 50s, really thought that the men who raped were those who couldn't get sex any other way. They just, couldn't get a woman to consent to them. So they resorted to rape. He had no concept. None. So we talked about the fact that 90 to 95, over 90%, I think at that time it was over 95% of men were male perpetrators. They knew the victim. This wasn't a stranger situation. Those types of numbers are shocking to people. They don't realize over 95% of victims know their perpetrator. And that's talking about male or female. So this idea of stranger rape that was really what sexual violence was aimed at initially, because it was more palatable to the general public. They could get behind the idea of being against a sexual predator who was, a stranger and stalked his victim and just pulled her off the street corner, or just broke into her apartment. They could get behind that concept. What they had a hard time getting behind was this notion that it could be anybody. And it is this exact notion that you're seeing currently, today, 2024, nearly 2025, in France, with Giselle Pellicot's rape case, where France, the everyday citizen in France, is being they're having to look at these men, these 35, well, there's over 50, but the 35 that have not pled, that are on trial, these 35 defendants, and look at them and go, they're a third grade teacher. They're an engineer. They're a police officer. They're people I interact with on an everyday basis. These are ordinary men. There's nothing spectacular. We're not talking about somebody who's extremely wealthy, who was paying people off. We're not talking about the creepy stranger homeless man who's down the street, who looks and smells weird. You're talking about the bus driver. And that's a hard pill for people to swallow. They don't like to be faced with that kind of knowledge. And France is really having its own, they're calling it their Me Too movement, where people, the average citizen, is actively getting behind this and saying, this is bullshit. This woman did nothing wrong in her 74 years of life. Had no clue that over 10 years she was being systematically raped. Over 200 rapes, I think they calculated, during that 10-year period of time. And her husband was drugging her. So she was totally incapacitated, totally unconscious during these rapes, just in case any of you guys were wondering. That started here. That started here in the 70s. And I'm not saying that it didn't start, that nobody else was talking about that. I'm just saying in the 70s, the women's movement was actively trying to get this concept across to people that it's everybody. we heard, at least I did, I heard stranger danger. That's what I got out of things in the 70s, right? In the 80s into the 90s, date rape. Okay, it could be somebody who's closer to you. Doesn't have to be a stranger. Okay, it could be an acquaintance. Something happens, you give them mixed signals. Could see this happening in a date situation. Okay, the public went, we can get behind this. All right, yeah. Date rape, that's the wrong thing. Date rape. Date rape's a bad thing. So what was said? Women, watch what you drink. Watch how much you drink. Watch what you say to the person. Make sure that your consent, your non-consent is very clear. So the early days of the advocacy that was not done by women's organizations left a lot to be desired. I know that you guys are having a separate conversation here. I'm trying not to get too pulled into it because I'm going to get 100% derailed, and I didn't want to get derailed quite yet. We also do see the beginnings of legal reform in the 1970s, mainly the efforts to eliminate marital rape not being a crime. Although every state had sexual assault laws at this time making sexual assault a crime, there was often a spousal exemption, which meant if you're married, you by law cannot be raped. So the 70s saw a repeal or rewriting of a lot of laws in regards to this and kind of fixing it so at least it was the laws were effective for everybody across the board. Child Protective Services was actually established in the 1970s as well. So there were a few protections geared towards children that were beginning during this time as well. Hey, Arlene, glad you're here. We are talking about anti-sexual assault campaigns, the early years. So let's talk about some campaigns in specific. So in January of 1971, in New York City, a group called the New York Radical Feminists, who was led by Susan Brown Miller, who ended up writing a bestseller book, which she released in 1975. And the name of that was Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape, which critical acclaim being, it was one of the, what they call the seminal pieces of feminist literature that was dealing with this issue. So 1971, they organized what they called a speak out. And they had about 300 women in attendance who just shared their stories of what had happened to them. Later in that year, in April of 1971, the group also put together a rape conference and addressed this issue as well. I want to show you a pamphlet from there, from this time period. And I'm going to have to figure out sharing this particular one. Hang on. So this is one of the pamphlets. And then that's the second one. And then here's the one for rape conference that was put together. So the first one, which was the Speak Out, and you can't really read this very well, but I'm going to go over here and I'm going to read it for you. It says, "We've been told, don't go out alone after dark. Don't talk to strangers. A woman's place is in the home." From 1960 to 1969, rape has increased 46% in big cities. Women are raped by men on the streets, husbands and boyfriends, psychiatrists, child molesters, gang rape. If women don't belong to one man, they're every man's property, and a raped woman is damaged property. Rape is the logical result of women being told to be submissive to the dominant male. Remember, I'm just reading, guys. Women unite, attend a speak out on rape. Let's testify about our experiences. And then it gives where it's going to be. Admission for women was free, and for men it was $2, and you had to be accompanied by a woman in order to attend the event, which makes sense at the time. So that is what that says in its entirety. Pretty powerful to have 300 people show up. 1971. And it was stated right on that there will be recordings. So we want your stories. This is something, we're trying to put down. This isn't just an anonymous thing. And women came together for it in droves. I think that's so fabulous. So I wanted to share that with you. I think it's always interesting to look at these historical documents, see where we've come from and how did we at the time unknowingly script our narrative in a way that we didn't really mean or that was incorrect, but look at the times. Look at what she said. Every woman who is not one man's property is every man's property. Well, not necessarily, right? I mean, the concept is everybody is everybody. But they're dealing with what they had at the time. Yeah, they wanted to take a stand. Janet says in 1971, her older sisters were not allowed to wear pants. They fought and they won. And subsequently, Janet, as the younger child, was allowed to wear pants to school. Thought it was always normal. So absolutely. People, when they're pushed too far, they will join together and rise up. And, it's exactly what happened. It took a while. And that's why I wanted you guys to see the evolution of dealing with sexual violence. It's not a matter that it wasn't there or that it wasn't recognized. It's just that there were other pressing issues of just even base equality for women, that until they got some headway with that, dealing with sexual violence, it wasn't going to be addressed specifically. So you've got those two campaigns, or they're not really campaigns, organized events in 1971 by the New York radical feminists. As the 1970s progressed, you saw more and more and more things that were put out, whether it was by women's groups, whether it was by the counterculture in the arts. I'll say government organizations, but there really wasn't a whole lot in regards to the government getting involved in this aspect. To show you the difference in terms of what I was able to find, first, I'm going to show you what I was able to find in what we public service announcements, what we think of as our typical public service announcements. Hang on, guys. I've got to, I think, pull up a different document. 1 second. Okay. So this is a PSA that was put out in the 1970s. And I'm going to have to pull it up. So give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry. It was just not working for me. All right. What number 70 I want to go to? Hang on. And I turned my volume down a little bit too, because I think that that was a little loud. All right, let me share this screen. Getting better at this, guys. Getting better, but it still takes me a minute. This is not cooperating. Okay.
You are looking at an abused child. Most men and women in prison today were abused children. The severe neglect and physical, sexual, and emotional abuse of our children make child abuse a national tragedy. It is estimated that there are at least 1 million cases of it in America each year. Over 2,000 of those abused children die each year. And because many abused children grow up to abuse their own children, child abuse is passed on from generation to generation. For many families, child abuse is a family tradition. Yet child abusers can be helped. Help destroy a family tradition. Write Prevent Child Abuse, Box 2866, Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. So, what do you think about that, guys? That was in the early 1970s. Now, this didn't deal with sexual abuse per se. However, it dealt with intergenerational trauma, talking about child abuse begets child abuse. From that aspect, I'm impressed. I'm impressed that they brought out this concept that early. When they were able then to bring out child abuse, child sexual abuse, for some reason, it was a little more difficult for people to go, okay, that's also intergenerational trauma. Someone who is abused can turn around and be an abuser. When we weren't talking about sexual violence, it was a lot easier for the public to take. You add sex in the equation, though, and people immediately get a little weird about it. And they're like, no, because it's not, because they have to think about it as a sexual violence, as a power and a control issue. And before the 70s, really late 60s, it wasn't thought of in those terms. You know, you can see the manipulation, you can see the gaslighting, you can see, you know, the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, very obvious, right? But to talk about sexual abuse being a generational thing, that took them where they didn't want to go. But at least from an intergenerational trauma standpoint, I'd like this PSA. I saw Body Illusion somewhere. Hello, haven't said hi to you, Barbie. Glad you're here as well. Hello, hello, hello. You guys stop real quick. You all helped get me over the 270 mark. I'm pushing now for my 271 subs, or my 275 subs. And my huge push is to get, though, to 500 by my 1-year anniversary, which is in February. So please like and subscribe. If you're already subscribed, share these videos, share the channel, the channel with anybody you know who you think could benefit from it, because they may not benefit themselves or they may not take advantage of it now, but they also may know somebody who does. And that is powerful. That's where our message is, getting the message on to somebody else. Okay, now there's one more in here, and this was put out in 1976. Let me get to that particular one. Okay, here we go. Again, just a minute long.
Something's wrong. For last year in the United States, an estimated 1 million children suffered needlessly. Something's wrong. For they suffered not because of accidents or disease. They suffered from abuse and neglect. Something's wrong. For at least 2,000 children died from abuse and neglect. That's 2,000 children a year whose promise will never be shared with us. Something's wrong, but it doesn't have to be. We could prevent child abuse before it happens. We could form crisis centers and self-help programs for abusers. We could, with enough people who care. For more information on child abuse and how you can help, please write Prevent Child Abuse, Box 2866, Chicago.
Okay. Hey, Seventh, how you doing? So again, another one. Bye, Keela. Have a great one. We'll talk to you. Mwah. Again, another one dealing with child abuse and neglect. Doesn't define that, because talking about child sexual abuse made the public very uncomfortable in 1976. So we'll just talk about child abuse and neglect. And we'll bring about this idea that we've got to help people. We need to help abusers as well as the abused. So you see in the 1970s this effort to help children. It's just not specific about child sexual abuse and getting aimed at that. That comes later. comes into the 1980s. However, still the government organizations are very slow to get behind this. And as we dealt with last time we were dealing with this issue, we saw where just the proliferation of shows, TV shows that dealt with this type of issue with child sexual abuse seemed to be tasked solely with getting this message across to us. There's one other one regarding children that I will speak with, but I'm going to deal with that when I deal with the 80s because it's in 84. And I want to continue on with the 70s and show you what happened in the 70s. The types of advocacy work that was being done in the 70s, specifically specific towards anti-sexual assault. In 1975, Now had an initiative that was entitled Rape is Rape. And honestly, I cannot find information on it beyond that. Even on the Now's website, it doesn't get specific enough. So I wanted to show you something from there, but I don't have anything, unfortunately. Interestingly enough, I'm going to show you a picture of a movie that was made in 1974. And let me find where I have it. Or if I need to pull it up again. Nope. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is a poster from this movie. It's a movie called Rape Squad. These women all had one thing in common. They had each been violated in the same savage way. When they looked for justice, it wasn't there. So they took the law into their own hand and made the revenge fit the crime. There you go. 1974. Interesting. Really interesting. Had never heard of the movie. Am shocked that something was out there like this. And I wondered why. And it seems that along with the vigilante movies, this kind of fell into. I don't know how popular it was. I don't know if it made any money, but certainly interesting for something like that to be out in 1974. You would think then that there could be, it's an opportunity for a wonderful conversation. Here we're talking about vigilantes who have taken the law into their own hands. Why would this movie have been made? Well, there were a number of cases in the 70s where particularly women of color, and we're talking any color, whether it's of African descent, whether it's any Asian descent. What was the other one? The American Indians, indigenous population. Go rest. I'll holler if I need you, but I want you to rest. Bye, Misha. Girl. So you had women who were what would be recognized now as battered women syndrome, who had been victims of not only domestic violence, but sexual violence as well. And they took a stand and they ended up killing their perpetrators. And they ended up going to jail for murder. Battered women syndrome was not quite recognized yet. And there were a lot of people who got behind these women and said, hey, wait a minute. These are the victims here. And so their cases did spark a conversation. And that's where you did see the spousal exemptions being taken out. So marital rape could then be a crime. I don't know in this particular film as to what the women's relationship vis-a-vis all the men were, whether they were just in relationships or married. But there was a deeper conversation happening then. In January of 1975, there was a film produced called Rape Culture by Cambridge Documentary Films, and it featured prisoners from the Lorton Reformatory in Virginia. And the way that this happened was there was a group in 1973 that was established as a nonprofit, Prisoners Against Rape, Inc., or PAR for short, PAR. And it was started by two prisoners, William Fulner and Larry Cannon. Fulner went on record stating that he was a rapist, he was a murderer, and he was a prison rapist. And he didn't want to be a rapist anymore. He wanted to learn how not to rape. And so he wrote to the newly opened Women's Center, the Crisis Center, Rape Crisis Center in DC, and said, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking. And they encouraged him to start a group, which he did. And the Women's Center started working with him. And they got a lot of flack for this. And the Women's Center said, hey, listen, we've got men who want to talk to us. We've got men who want to change. Why would we pass up this opportunity? If nothing else, we are educating them. If nothing else, they are getting this information. Whether they choose to use it or not, that's up to them. But we're spreading the word, we're getting the knowledge out, and this can only be a good thing. So in 1975, they made this movie, Rape Culture, that talked to these prisoners, talked to them about their situation and, why they did what they did, whether or not they viewed themselves as in the right as to what they did. And it was really pretty incredible. I'd love to see it. It's something that I'm sure is out there that I could see, but I hadn't been able to find a copy that I could look at. Right. Billy Jack trilogies. Now, Body Illusion, that's something that I have not heard. I'll have to look that up. I do not know about the Billy Jack trilogies. Like I said, I mean, the more you delve in deep, the more you can find. I mean, we could do the emergence of the advocacy, sexual anti-rape campaigns of the 1970s, and we would find a lot of things. I tried to pull out some of the highlights of what I could see as being pretty seminal moments in a conversation, whether they actually were or not. I'm not sure what kind of public release this film got, being that it was a documentary. So I don't know what type of exposure or kind of a conversation in the larger national stage that it produced, but it certainly was on the forefront, I think, of dealing with this issue, getting the men directly involved. One of the next big campaigns in the 70s that happened began in 1977. And it was when a group called Ariadne, and it's Ariadne, formed. And they were a social art network before the internet was even invented. And there were two women in particular, Suzanne Lacey and Leslie Leibowitz, who were advocacy workers for women's rights of all sorts, but particularly anti-sexual violence. So these people got together to support these two artists and what they were doing. One of the first things that they did together was in 1977 in Los Angeles. And I want to get a picture from this for you so you could see what this looked like. Okay. So here we have Los Angeles, 1977. These women across the top are the people who were involved the most with the creation of this. Suzanne Lacey, Melissa Hoffman, somebody named Frank, and Judith Lostchild, or Louis Child. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her last name. But let me get over here so I can scroll through this for you. So when you scroll down, you'll see a woman lying down here, and they're going to take her outline in chalk. And the other man is writing in chalk, a woman was raped here. And as you can see, he actually ended up writing two women were raped here, May 9th and May 21. And they took these from actual police reports. And they did this throughout the city. And it was weird because as they were doing it, other people started doing it in other parts of the city as well. But it definitely made a mark, literally and figuratively, because the paper picked it up. Here you can see just woman raped and an X. So they started doing it, and you'd find these would pop up all over the city. And this was a pretty powerful way of putting this in somebody's face and going, look, this isn't just an idea, you know, it isn't just somebody that it happens to, that woman of ill repute. You know, this is everybody. This is our next door neighbor. It doesn't just happen in dark alleys. Look, it happened right here at this bus stop. Right here. You're standing where this woman was raped. They're able to put you directly into that situation. You can't ignore it anymore. And what they did subsequently, put it into the public space in an even bigger scale. Now you can just imagine in the United States if the internet had been a thing. Because LA picked this up. I don't know how many, I didn't get into the research that much to go then find out with these next campaigns. Was it picked up on the national news? Did any other cities pick up on this? Were there other, people who then ended up doing it in other cities? That I don't know. But later on, so in May of 1977, Suzanne Lacey, along with some other people, there were a couple of different things that happened simultaneously. One was called 3 Weeks in May. And what happened was Suzanne Lacey, they ended up putting up two 25-foot billboards. And on one billboard, there were the locations of where people had been raped. And then there were also outlines. And I want to get this right, as they said here. So the one listed the locations of the rapes that were reported daily from the LA Police Department. So for that 3-week period in May. And it was stenciled rape. And then there was 9 more rapes put near there to illustrate the number of rapes that occurred but weren't reported to the police. So trying to get across this idea that, listen, look at all these rapes, and that's a fraction of what's actually happening. Those are the ones that are brave enough to go to the police, or because of their situation, maybe the hospital did call the police. But look at all of these other people who, for one reason or another, their cases are never reported to the police. And the other billboard listed all of the locations, names, and phone numbers of all the help centers around the city. So I thought that was wonderful to include both. So they had the two billboards were right near each other, so you could see both of them. In conjunction with this, the last 4 days so there was this performance that was done over 4 days. I do not believe it was in a row. I know the last one coincided with the last day that the 3 Weeks in May was being posted. Okay. Yeah, it was just these 4 performances were spread out throughout this period, with the last one being on the last day. And each performance took the audience through stages of educating the public on how rape culture is ingrained in false beliefs and our societal institutions. That's how they encapsulate it. But what do we mean specifically? Let's look at it. Okay, so here you can see this is part of the first performance that they would have done, and it was called Myths of Rape. And so their goal was to address these. So here you can see back here on one side, myth, rape occurs only among strangers, and then reality. 34% of reported rape cases involve, and I can't read what the rest says. Here the myth says rape is sexual. Reality, major motive for rape is aggression, not sex. Men that rape have normal sexual personalities. Differ from norm only in greater tendency to express with violence, I think is what it says. This myth, it could never happen to me. Reality, any woman, any age, range, status is a potential rape victim. Here, that's that one. myth is amongst strangers here. 34% of rape cases. I can't read that. 34% of reported rape cases involve cases where the victim knows the rapist. 14% of cases, rapist is a friend or family member or a friend of a family. Myth, women who are raped asked for it. Says most rapes are the victim is threatened with bodily harm if she resists. And she can dress in any manner and still be a potential rape victim. Pretty powerful. So that was their I'm going to have to do it this way now. Nope. Sorry, guys. Okay, monkeying around with that. Sorry about it. Oh, so the second performance was called The Rape. The third one was All Men Can Be Rapists. And the final performance was titled Fight Back. So they really delved into each step of this and tried to educate the public as they went along as to what the reality of rape was, what the reality was for women in regards to sexual violence. And again, I don't know how far out of LA this got, if other places, did it make the New York newspaper, what was going on over there and what they were trying to do? I don't know, but pretty powerful. The same group in 1978, they're operating from about 1977, I think, to 1982, this particular group. I'm not sure if they lasted longer than that, but I found performances or campaigns, things that they did up until at least 1982. But in 1978, Suzanne Lacey, Leslie Leibowitz, and Claudia King in Las Vegas did I'll title it a show. It was over a 10-day period, from reverence to rape to respect. And what they wanted to get across to everybody was the pervasive rape culture in Las Vegas, or how commercialized and commoditized women's bodies were in Las Vegas. So that was their whole gist. That's why they started doing this. And I want to show you, let me see if I can get some pictures of this. Oh, de-doy. One of these days, I am going to have this better. But here we go. So this is part of what went on in Las Vegas. As you can see, they had a huge billboard up and said, rape is everybody's concern. And they have some placards with the myth, and then with what the reality is, similar to what they had done a few months prior in LA. Then just show you some other, because there are different things that went on throughout the city. And let me show you the next one. Okay, there's the first. So here you see they've got, they did press conferences throughout the time that they were here. I don't know what the myth was this one, but it says reality, less than 10% of murders involve sexual assault. Women who resist at once seldom receive more than cuts and bruises. I'm not sure what myth that was in regards to. Let's see. Oh, if you resist, you will be killed. That's the myth. Another myth, women asked for it. Rape is a sexual crime, and rape only occurs amongst strangers. A few of the myths that they were trying to dispel. Here is a picture of Margaret St. James giving a thumbs down to the pornos, the live booths where men were. And I will put up any of these links that I put up today. I'm not going to put up the final link. It's, or I'm not going to show the final pictures in this campaign that they had. They're quite disturbing. There's some dead animal carcasses, and one situation where the women coat themselves in like some red gel or something, and there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to digest, and it's definitely something that if you want to go look at it, you're more than welcome to. And I'll put the post up, and you can see the campaign in its entirety that they did over those 10 days in Las Vegas. All right. So that is Ariadne, at least how I'm pronouncing it. So in the 1980s, let me just, before I move to the 1980s, because that's all I've got for the 70s to actually show you. So yeah, we kicked it off. We got it kicked off in a big, big, big way in the 1970s. Oh, don't take those figures. That was 1974, Ben. So any of that 10%, 34% that I was reading, those were 1970 figures. And heaven only knows where they got their figures from, because there hadn't been a ton of studies done. Actually, one of the earlier studies that was done, and it was a very small scale, but it was put out in 1974. And it was by the Queens. Hang on, I want to get it right. Queens Bench Foundation. They started a study in 1973. It was eventually published in 1975, 73, 74. They did some studies, and it was entitled the Rape Victimization Study. And the Queens Bench Foundation was a group of San Francisco women lawyers and judges. And so they were looking at this issue of victimization and the legal system. And it's very interesting. It's a little long for me to do anything. I can't talk about it in depth here, but just to let you know kind of what they found in a nutshell was the laws needed changing, and B, there was huge education that needed to be done on the part of what I'll call first responders, hospitals, lawyers, judges, law enforcement personnel, pretty much everybody that a rape victim is going to come in contact with if they are going to put their case out there in the legally. They're like, we're failing them at every step of the way. The lack of sympathy, the lack of belief, the lack of compassion, they list it all. And it was, they found they were extremely lacking in all of those different areas. So it says the findings indicated a great need for public education and for sensitizing people who come into contact with rape victims. Staff spoke with various professional groups, community agency staffs, and high school students. A volunteer counseling service was established at Central Emergency Hospital. This is in San Francisco, staffed by paraprofessionals who have been trained to respond to the immediate needs of victims who are treated at the facility. They also developed a guide for victims of sexual assault, which was available then at all hospitals and police departments for any of the survivors then to be able to look at and say, okay, what do I do now? What are my rights? What should I be feeling? Just giving them some basic immediate trauma care within these pamphlets. So pretty proud of my profession for once. It's nice hearing something to do with attorneys that was good. I'm incredibly impressed that these women got together and established this foundation and said, hey, this is something we got to look into, and took it upon themselves to do with that. No worries, Misa, no worries. Thanks. Yeah. Let me know if you liked it or if you didn't like it. I don't care which one just as long as you push something or comment after. That's also a great way. The algorithm loves it to push these videos out to more people. I'm going to try again to have AIs make some shorts after this. But the likelihood of that happening is probably slim to none, just because it doesn't make very great shorts. And if I go over 2 hours, which I'm about there, it won't make them for me. So I'll have to make them. Oh, well, that's okay. All right. That closed out the 70s. So I really got involved with the beginnings of this, and I wanted to see tangible efforts. I wanted to show you guys videos. I wanted to show you guys pictures and representations so that you can truly understand where this effort came from and what they had to do to get people's attention. The types of things that the Ariadne group did was very much designed to be in the public face and to be shocking, because they wanted people's attention. They knew they wouldn't be able to get it any other way. There we go. Sorry. Need another drink. So what happens with the 80s with their efforts and anti-sexual violence? Well, for the first time, we're starting to get away from this idea of stranger rape, and date rape is put into the public's consciousness, mainly by a woman by the name of Mary Koss, Koss. She was a researcher and psychologist who talked about the concept of date rape a lot in her work, and she's credited with coining the term. Whether it was exactly her or somebody else, where she heard it from, don't know. 100% know for sure, but she did speak about it a lot. And the reason that she wanted to get this idea of across was that sexual assaults can occur in dates or social situations, not just stranger situations. So again, getting closer to this idea that your perpetrator can be someone you know very well. It can be somebody who you've just met. But it can be somebody who you've been engaging with. It doesn't have to be a total stranger. So then throughout the 80s and into the 90s, you definitely had this idea of date rape. And when the date rape drug, when GHB really came in, roofies came on the market and started being a problem, Rohypnol, you saw more and more education being pushed out on, hey, watch what you're drinking. The problem is that from the posters that I found in the 80s, I only found them across the pond, and I wanted to have some ones here from the United States to show you. They didn't do the greatest job in removing the victim blaming. They were still trying to couch things in terms of women watch what you do, watch where you go. The idea of date rape was being pushed hard, so it was being pushed on and rolled out onto college campuses. This is where you found women's orgs, whether they were addressing just gender equality or whether they were addressing sexual violence. These organizations sprouted up pretty much on every college campus that you can imagine. I don't know when they got into the more of the high schools. I think that was later, at least, even though I had a pretty large high school, I was in a smaller-ish town. So I don't know when things like this happened in LA or New York or Chicago, but definitely in the 80s and the 90s, the college campuses were getting on board with this. And the Take Back the Night marches were starting in the college campuses in the 80s and in the 90s. So you really saw a huge whoosh, explosion of all of this. I'm glad you're getting something out of it, Barbie. I love research. I'm a researcher at heart, so that's why I tend sometimes on these topics that I thought, oh, well, just this is interesting and I'll cover it once. And it ends up being like a 3-part series because I am researching so much and finding so much information out. And sorry, guys, I have a little piece of hair that's driving me bonkers. I got to get that out of my head. All right. So I don't actually have things from the 80s and the 90s to show you. It's a gap in the US that I wasn't able to fill out. Sometimes things that I thought might be from here were actually post 2000s. So I'm going to try and fill in this gap at some point. So we'll come back and look at the subject again. There's always more to research. But one of the things that I found from 1990 was something called the Clothesline Project. Now, guys, I had never heard of this before. I have never seen it before. I want to do this in the spring. If you live somewhere where it is wonderful, nice and beautiful, and you don't have snow or rain issues right now, something you could do in your community. I think this is amazing. And it's something that would be, it's a grassroots organization. It was founded, let me take a show of hands, or anybody who's there. Anybody hear of the Clothesline Project? It's now gone like Take Back the Night throughout the world. And you can find them in countries all across the globe, and all different kinds of cities have done these on large scales and smaller scales. I think of how powerful it could be just even on a small individualized scale with nothing more than, say, 5 or 10 t-shirts. Let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to guess that nobody has heard of it because the comments are zero, quiet. There was a grassroots campaign in, it was the Cape Cod's Women's Agenda. And there was a woman who was a member of this called Carol Cicchetto. Cicchetto. Hopefully I'm saying that properly. And they came up with this project as a way of raising awareness about sexual violence, about the people that it occurs to, about highlighting our survivors, and that the issues that go along with sexual assault don't end after it occurs. That's the beginning of our nightmare. Just the beginning. So let me show you some pictures from this because I think it's absolutely amazing. Hang on. Share screen. All right, here we go. Can you guys see this? Is this not amazing? So the Clothesline Project, it addressed not only sexual violence, but domestic violence as well. Throughout the 80s, the issues of domestic violence were becoming more and more pronounced in the public conversation. And you certainly saw this in the late 80s and then definitely into the 90s. To give you kind of a perspective, 1987, National Domestic Violence Awareness Month was established. It wasn't until 2001, I think it was, that Sexual Assault Awareness Month was created. So 14 years. So domestic violence got a month, 14 years before sexual assault did. That tells you. And they hadn't even been pushing domestic violence that hard until the 70s or till the 80s and 90s. Well, yes, beginning with all of this, along with the women's movement, domestic violence was being presented as an issue, but it was really in the 80s and 90s when it started taking off and becoming commonplace in the public conversation. People were okay talking about it. Violence, yes. Don't hit your partner. That seems to be pretty logical. But sexual assault, oh gosh, that's harder to deal with. And so people didn't want to talk about it. Well, here's a way, again, of putting something into somebody's face and letting them deal with it. I'm going to run this several times because it doesn't stay on any of them very much, and I can't get it to stop. But what I can do is I can keep going back. So here, you no longer control me. I am broken. It was not my fault. I couldn't leave without my dogs. I felt stuck. You said you loved me. I felt there was no way out. This one says, I'm not crazy or unstable. I was abused. There's that one. I was isolated and alone. It can happen to anyone. Here. I was 4 and I remember. Here, everyone knew and no one said anything. I'm not sure what that one says. Nothing I did was right. I am a survivor. No more. You said it wouldn't happen again. It was not my fault. Here, he killed my cat. Why me? I struggle every day. Hands are not for hitting. Why me? I was afraid I'd lose my kids. He said I'd love me. You no longer control me. Wow, right? Wow. Look at you. Look at you. Yes, that's where I was at, the clothesline project. Yes, yes, yes. I will put that. I will put that into the description. Yeah, this one struck me. I thought it would for you guys as well. How easy. Something so easy. Get a group of survivors together. You know, I just it definitely something that I'm interested in doing. When you do merch, you could all do our own t-shirts for that. Yeah, yeah. They have it set up. Let me see here. So you saw different colors of t-shirts, and they said white was for people who had died from violence. Yellow or beige was for battered or assaulted victims. Red, pink, and orange were for survivors of rape and sexual assault. Blue or green for survivors of incest or child sexual violence. So, you know, of course, and I know some of you, we're going to have to put patchwork shirts together, you know, because I could use blue, green, red, pink, and orange for mine. Yeah. And here's another interesting fact. The women started this. They originally hung them across Village Green in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And they started the project when they learned that 51,000 women were killed by men who claimed they loved them. And that was during the same period as the Vietnam War. Now, what caused them to look into that, or if somebody had just reported a statistic and that's what struck them, I don't know. So it was originally this idea of women being killed by the people who were their partners. and that involving domestic assault, but also then recognizing sexual assault that could occur within that relationship, and then just recognizing survivors. Exactly. Stripes. God, I'm thinking patchwork, but you're right. You're right. You're right. Just a striped shirt, Janet. We could do that too, because you could have the multiple stripes going across. Yeah. I was so impressed with that. I was so impressed with that coming out in 1990. There's one other particular campaign that I want to address. I'm going to leave it for last. It was in 1991. It's Canada. It's the only non-US one that I have, but Canada started it, and then it spread. So congrats to you Canadians. Barbie, you're welcome. You're welcome here. We understand. We get it. A lot of us have dealt with what you're dealing with now, that our memories don't always come to us in logical sequence. They don't always come to us in a way that makes sense. And sometimes it takes a good while before we're able to even piece things together. But you're in good company. If you ever need anyone to talk to, you've definitely got a great crew here. Anyone needs to get in touch with me, Surviving Together, SAS@gmail.com, which is in every video description. So you can always get a hold of me that way. And so I want to talk about that campaign last, just to let you know, through covering the rest of the 90s, going up to 2000, I wanted to just get out there some of the things. So the National Coalition Against Sexual Assault was founded in 1980, and it was a pretty important organization that was started, and it was funded with federal dollars, and its goal was to be funding these local organizations, these local crisis centers, and to be able to provide funding for them, and so that they could provide the resources directly for the people in their communities. That led to several other large organizations that were formed directly on the heels of the Violence Against Women's Act, which was passed in 1994. This is federal legislation. It provided federal resources to combat domestic violence and sexual assault. So again, we're dealing with these two issues, these violent, these issues that are based in violence. They're dealing with them together. They're addressing them together. But finally, laws are being changed. Laws are being strengthened. You see laws changing throughout the United States where larger penalties are being given for sexual assault. The issue of children are being addressed. And so in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you're seeing laws particular to children in regards to their age, in regards to authority above them. Those types of situations, you're seeing laws being made to address that. In 1994, RAIN was established, and that is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. And it's a nonprofit organization, have tons of resources. I have them listed in the description of every video that I have. And then in 2000, the National Sexual Violence Resource Center was established, and that helped as going hand in hand along with the National Coalition Against Sexual Assault again, to provide resources to the local level, to the rape crisis centers, and all the organizations, any of the state coalitions, organizations on a state level that got together and were trying to do different campaigns or organizing some sort of march or whatever, they could look to that organization for funding. So let's go back to the beginning of the 1990s. 1991, let's back up a couple of years. And I'll rely on all my Canadians here present to let me know if you remember this at all. Not something that was ever on my radar. But apparently in 1989, there was a massacre of 14 female students at the University of Montreal by a gentleman by the name Marc Lapine. 2 years later, on the anniversary of the massacre, so in 1991, a group of pro-feminist men got together and took a stand against violence against women. And they launched the White Ribbon Campaign. So do any of you, any of my Canadians, or any of my US people, but do any of you remember this in the early 1990s, the White Ribbon Campaign in Canada? École Polytechnique, yes. So these men got together and said, this is not okay. And so just like we had pink ribbons for breast cancer, here was white ribbons. And wearing that white ribbon, you could tie them around a tree or wear it. These were for men, and it represented that that man was pledging to never commit, condone, or remain silent about violence against women. And subsequently, that campaign, the White Ribbon Campaign, has spread to, nearly every corner of the globe. We've got them all over the place, but it's recognized then as a symbol of men being against women and violence. Originally I was a little surprised just because I don't know a whole lot about Canada other than what I know now and what I've learned from my Canadian friends now. But Canadian politics, Canadian social scenes, not a whole heck of a lot that I know about the history. So originally when I found out about the organization 1 in 6, and I was like, and that was started in Canada. Interesting. And now it's spread out. And they have branches more places. I want to find something. Hang on. But I'm like, you know what? It's the Canadian men. They're the ones we need to thank for kind of getting this ball rolling. Of men recognizing. Now, granted, 1991 White Ribbon Campaign was men taking a stand against violence against women. I'm trying to find out. Okay, so 1 in 6, which refers to the fact that 1 in 6 men in their lifetime will experience sexual abuse or assaults. It was started in 2007. Amazing. Started in 2007. So that is definitely in my post-2000 world, advocacy world. That is definitely one of them that I will be raising. Janet says it's known as the Montreal Massacre. And it was an anti-feminist crime, and that's why he shot only female students. Wow. Yeah, definitely not something that was on my radar. Janet says the murderer said that the women were taking up engineering student space that men could have filled, and that there's a day of remembrance for it. Wow. Wow. You even have a day of, well, wow, no wonder something came out of it. I mean, great. I mean, I'm thrilled that something came out of it. More times when we have this, things should come out of them. Those crimes that happen that just shake us all and force us to look at this issue and say, wait a minute, what is going on here? Where are we as a universe? What are our ideals that some guy thought that this was okay? No, this isn't okay. We're not going to stand for it. And for these men to get together, this wasn't women getting together. This was men getting together and saying, no, this isn't okay. You don't get to do that. I'm impressed. I'm impressed, Canadians. I'm impressed with your men. Of the ones that I'm covering so far, I'm impressed with your men. So let it be said right here. I was impressed by Canadian men. All right. Let's see. And that brings me to the close of Anti-Sexual Violence Advocacy pre-2000. So obviously there are a lot more other things to talk about in here. You know, in the 1980s, there's an organization called Women Against Rape that was spreading throughout the world. I remember I was in Philadelphia in 1992. There was an organization there, WAR, and they just WOAR, Women Organized Against Rape. They wanted to make sure that they were denoting themselves as being different than the WAR organization, which actually started in the United Kingdom in 1977, but really started spreading throughout the globe into the 80s. And then there was a group that started a campaign called Zero Tolerance in 1992, and that was out of Scotland. And it was a series of posters that they put up showing in different situations that we should have zero tolerance for sexual violence, whether it was against a woman, a child, a man, within a marriage. So they took each of these scenarios and said zero tolerance. It's not okay. It's never okay. Sexual violence is not the answer to anything, and it's never okay to resort to. Again, within my time frame, but not within the U.S. So that's why I left them out. Dealing with, the same topic, not U.S. It's definitely would be a bigger project than I'm capable of taking on right now. Probably have to do it sections by sections of the world, Europe, and even pre-2000s. I'd have to go probably country by country So maybe there's something worldwide that I will eventually cover. But for now, in regards to the advocacy work, I'm going to be sticking close to home. So it's mainly going to be US, occasionally Canada, if they're right on the heels of what we're doing in the US, if there's something there that to bring in. Otherwise, you know, the Canadian activism is a whole show. It's a whole live within and of itself, I'm sure, because my guess is they had a very similar experience to what we did. But I don't know that. And I don't know their timelines. I don't know how that lines up to the US. So having done this now, looking at Canada, that would be, you know, that would be an interesting research topic to take on. So maybe I'll do that too. Mark it down in my little book, all of my ideas for different shows. Flick Flocks. I almost said Flick Flocks. Flick Box. I just congratulated you and your UK people. You guys started Women Against Rape, and you had the Zero Tolerance campaign. So good deal. Hey, Chris, what's up? What's going on? Thanks for stopping by. Hey, guys, if you aren't subscribed, I'm just going to mention real quick again, please subscribe, check your bell, make sure your notifications say all. If you're not getting notifications for the shows, because you should be, and hit the like button, guys. And after the show, if you can leave a comment, even if it's just hi or, you know, liked your show, whatever, just the more conversation we get going, the more the algorithm likes it, the more it pushes it out. I'm still very slow on making my shorter videos, which aren't the lives, which I know are going to be a better way of getting some of this information across to people. But anywho, let's see. Yeah, that's it for right now. Like, subscribe, share the videos. I never end up saying that, but do please, yeah. Any videos you see, whether there are ones in particular, or feel free to share my email address with anybody who you feel needs it. Again, I'm not a licensed therapist, not a psychologist, just a trauma survivor who's seen a lot, been through a lot, coming out the other side, I think, and here to provide a space where we can all help each other and hopefully learn some things along the way. And Chris, being one of the Canadian males, you are getting all of the, I don't think we have another Canadian male here right now. So for the white ribbon campaign, well done, sir. Well done is what I have to say. Oh, perfect. Misha says, anyone who's interested, we're looking for advocates from all over the world to represent their countries and experiences. You can message me, or you can message the community, the Villages community page. Misha, why don't you go ahead and throw up the Villages page as well, so the guys can check that out. And I would be happy to be a part of anything representing the U.S. or a piece of the U.S. since we're so big. Whatever. But I definitely say in the spring, would love to get some of the content creators together who are part of the village and to do a clothesline project. I don't know about you, but that just excites me so, and it's so simple, and it wouldn't even cost a whole lot of money to do, you know? And I don't have Cash App or Venmo. There's a PayPal that, if you want to support the channel, at Surviving Together is my PayPal. That's in the description below as well. Currently, any money that comes in for that, it just goes back into the channel for StreamYard and for some of the equipment that I need to do, like a new camera. I want to get something that is a little bit better than this, and some lighting, so I'm not relying on all of this stuff. So that's mainly stuff for the channel is what I've asked for Christmas. So we'll see. I did read above. I'm not first clip of the day. Okay, I can't get onto that while I'm here. I have to do that in, I think, from my phone. I'm not sure what's going. Not sure which chat is that, Misha? What are you trying to put up? And I think my phone's dead. Yeah, my phone's dead. Well, that was wonderful. Well, let's see if we can. Probably gonna have to. Yeah. It's so dead, it's not even going to zero. It needs to charge. Oh, well. Dinner time in Toronto. Did I tell you the people in Canada, the men, Barbie, were from Toronto? So if you got any Canadian men who you like, pat them on the back for me, okay? Have a good one. All right, so Misha just threw up the villages. It's We Are That Village. So you go at We Are That Village if you just needed to search for it. And I can't pull up her clip. So you guys will have to just go into that directly and see what she was referring to there, because I don't know. All right. Is that it? Are we dinner time? Is that what we're doing? I think we have leftover pizza here because we were definitely off the turkey train by last night. All right. I think that's it. Nobody, I don't have any last comments from anybody. So I will close this out just over. Wow. That last half hour flew by. I thought we were like 10 after 5, guys. I've been rambling for a half an hour. Why didn't you say something? Oh my gosh. Oh, Janet, go rest. Crystal, go get some sleep. Ned, go get some rest. Everybody else, get rest too. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something. I will definitely put up the links of the things that I went over today in the video description afterwards. Probably take me about a half an hour to get everything up there. So if you're looking for anything specific, give me a few minutes. But I'll put up all the links that I had. Remember that you are worthy, you are valuable, and you're loved for who you are, just the way you are. Remember, we survive together, never alone. Hugs and love from me, guys. We'll see you Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And I think I have that we're going to continue our grief series a little bit. And then a week from today is the first Saturday of the month. I thought it was going to be today. I thought we were going to have Laugh Saturday, but then I looked and I was like, it's the 30th, which reminds me I have to pay my bar dues. I totally forgot about that. And then yesterday it came out and I was like, I haven't scheduled that in. I got to pay those today. Otherwise there's a $50 fine for getting it late. You'll be at work on Wednesday. That's fine. We can see you on replay. Love to everybody. Mwah.